Hello, Sunshine. Welcome back to another episode of heartablazepodcast. And today's another episode about pottery, actually, but it's a different experience altogether. So if you live in Sydney, Australia, there's a learning center called Ozanam. It's actually sponsored, I believe, by Vinny or run by Vinny's, one of those like thrift vintage stores or secondhand op shops. Anyway, it's also sort of like a charity organization. So on every Wednesday, they have a booked in event. So you have to book for it because it's quite popular. So you just email or call them. And during winter, apparently it's not as busy. So it was pretty easy to book in. Booked in last week, and then I got it for this Wednesday. And then when you go in, you can actually start signing in early if you're lined up early and write your name down for the next Wednesday. Apparently, though, their kiln is currently down. So it's looking to get fixed, or at least looked at this Fridays. And the teachers are not here next week, so we will be basically doing stuff this Wednesday and then skipping next Wednesday and then be coming back on the Wednesday after, so you can expect some follow-up for this episode. Anyway, so I was meant to grab this. So basically, I knew it was basically going to be it's a pretty free kind of class. You have a big room, you have some faux wheels, you have some glaze, some underglaze, you have all the tools you pretty much need to sculpt something. And what this class is about, it's focused on sort of hand kneading and hand sort of sculpting things. So you don't really like do the full, there's only 2 wheels, so you can't really do a full class of like wheel throwing and all that. But you know, the more advanced people generally will then go on that. Oh, I just realized that this mode of the lights actually changes non-stop into a bunch of stuff. This looks like it's going crazy. Anyway, so I went in with a plan because I have been there once a long time ago, so I generally know what's the like how it runs. And I knew that last time I went in without a plan, so it made it a lot more challenging. And I made something that I didn't really care about. I made like a little dinosaur, and then I never ended up going back for ages. So you know, usually those just get fired up, and then you know, they let people practice on whatever people leave behind and don't kind of come to claim. But I went in with a plan this time. The first design I didn't do because it wasn't really that high up on my list, but it was the first design I wrote up. I was going to do like a sunflower ball, as you can see on the top bit, this one. I think that would have been a bit tedious anyway. I just don't really want to make cups because it's going to be very hard for it to be balanced, I think. And I don't know if it's going to be food grade and everything by the time it's finished, so I kind of opt out on that. And what my other idea was, I love to make coasters. And I always see coasters like, you know, people making cookies and biscuits and famous kind of like, you know, whatever. So I was thinking a waffle coaster would be cool. Then I came up with a pancake coaster. So the idea was like this. You can see like basically you have a pancake piece, and then you have like a butter and kind of slightly melted on the corner, but then enough space so you can put your mug on it. I thought that was the coolest idea, and that one's the one that I was most happy with, I think. Then I thought choc chip cookie. It's actually the one I started with, and had the ideas roughly fleshed out. And I had a Swiss roll idea as well. That one was like kind of got me stuck at the end because I did it last, and I was kind of trying to figure out how to execute it so it kind of looks like a Swiss roll. I think with the color, it will be a lot more obvious. And then I was going to do like a sort of like a weird bag inspired one by someone special who loves a certain bag that he showed me yesterday. But I didn't end up getting around to it. But you know, there's always next week. I mean, the next week. And I want to do like a mug with grooves. I love mugs with like those kind of like trailing kind of grooves. A little bit similar to like this vase, I guess, but like more like rustic and unruly. Oh, that was very close. Sorry you had to see that. Yeah, I think that was most of it. The waffle one would have been really cool, but I think that would have been a nightmare to make, to be honest. But yeah, so I'm going to show you some footages because I took a lot of footages on my Meta AI glasses, so I could focus on playing with the clay, having fun, chit-chatting with people, getting to know the people. The people there were super friendly. They pretty much strike up a chat straight away and introduce themselves, and they ask you what your name is and also like how long you've been there, and then kind of like just, you know, being nice to each other. It's a very friendly environment. So if you're feeling like nervous and want to go try and or don't really want to start with paying a kind of a hefty price for classes because they can be a bit expensive when they're not on sale, this is a great place to start and just get a feel for the clay. And also I can recommend you can order online or go to like sort of like cheap budget stores or like those kind of souvenir shops, you know, like Asian budget stores. You can get Sculpies, which is like a very good kind of clay that you can bake off in your oven. Good for making trinkets and stuff. Or you can get like dry, I think air dry clay is what it's called. Again, it's available in those places or just off Amazon, and those will make it available for you to do it in your solitude, so you don't have to feel nervous or anxious about other people judging if that's what you're worried about. Anyway, let's jump right into it. So we're starting off the day by obviously getting dressed, and I wanted something cozy, but I also wanted something relatively easy to kind of undress and avoid kind of getting dirty from the clay, and just feeling lazy cozy vibes. So I've got my favorite slip-on shoes. I'm wearing more layers. I wore like one t-shirt, a lighter sweater, and a thicker sweater, and then my infinity scarf, and then my favorite one of my favorite beanies.
You can use these colours here if you just want to
unfortunately, in hindsight, it looked a little
they wouldn't be fired or anything either, so
very much like lesbian-esque and grandma vibes, according to the person that I like. And we both
got any suggestions for how to go about it, or what kind of stuff to do?
Just make up your...
I'll probably still be wearing that at some point again, but it's just that we thought it was so freaking hilarious because I didn't see it until after he mentioned it, and I cannot unsee it now. But here's the one that's going to date me, so joke's on you. Anyway, so we started off basically getting a bit of a tour of the place because we're this lovely lady opposite to me, Catherine, that's her first time in the studio, and I have been only here once, and it was such a long time ago. I kind of need a refresher. And you just get a clay, showed us what board to use to kind of like work on, and so it's easy to clean up afterwards. And then you want to compact your clay. You got your piece of clay, you got like cling wrap all in the tub. And I basically started off by deciding how big I roughly want the size, and I portioned them out so that I can see roughly how many I can make from the slab, because I didn't want to overuse the clay as well, save some for other people. And then I used the two woods to kind of roll it out into the circular shape before I start working on my chocolate chip cookie coaster. And I kind of compact it again, get it a bit more rounder, and then kind of go back and try to get it the same size. They're going to be tapered at the edge anyway, so I wasn't too fussed about that. This step is mostly to help with trying to get the middle center part of it where the coast, like where the mug is going to go like level, so that the mug isn't going to have the risk of kind of falling off or like sliding around, if you catch my drift. Anyway, so then I started working on the choc chips, kind of shaping them first. This was really fun. I really enjoyed it. There's something therapeutic about it, even though it was utterly hilarious for some reason as well. And then basically I started working on adding texture after that with my fingers or with the sponge for like that cookie kind of texture, like by dabbing it a little bit all around, using my fingers to kind of create some prints. And then also kind of then having to find something to kind of create the middle indent area for the mug, because I really wanted it to kind of sit more flush inside of it. But I made it more bigger because some mugs are quite different, and I find coasters sometimes a bit small for that. So I wanted a little bit heavier set, if that makes sense. So after that, then I basically found that there wasn't really anything the right size that I wanted that I can use that's flat, except for this red thing, which was hollow though. So I basically just kind of imprinted the size I wanted and used the sculpting tool and just kind of emptied out the middle part. One of the tips that we got told, one is obviously you want to compact your clay before you start working on it and then shaping it, because any air is trapped inside where it's not compressed enough. When you shape it and fire it later on, it tends to crack. So that's a big issue that often happens with newer people's stuff. The other thing was we do have to spray it more often with the misting it more often with the spray bottle for water, because on these boards apparently they tend to dry and like evaporate faster, which I did notice was really, really true. It really didn't take long for it to get absorbed. So I did use that to my advantage, sprayed it pretty liberally, and then after I carved out the center part, I just used my finger to run it over after the spraying of the water, and then just kind of smooth out the edges to shape sort of like that, like that slopey sides for like the cookie shape, and then also kind of make the insides where I've cut it where it's a little bit less, a little bit bumpy and uneven, just kind of smooth it out. And then went in with the sponge to come back with the texture. For the choc chips, that was pretty fun. Basically my idea was I just kind of go around carving some holes, either pushing some holes out with my finger or using the tool to carve some, and just try to make it as irregular and unnatural as natural as possible by kind of not making it too even. And then it was quite fun. I basically sometimes use the whole chalk chip and just in different directions, or I would cut them in half or cut them in weird directions so that I can put them in sort of like facing a different direction, so it looks like they've been mixed in rather than delicately placed in place. And I know, like, from watching a lot of videos, and I don't know if this is vital, you could correct me if you're an expert, you have to kind of like scratch out the parts where you're trying to attach different pieces of clay, because otherwise the surface, if it's even, it would not stick properly. So I did that with the chocolate chip and the holes. And yeah, and then that one was pretty much done. The only thing was, I decided from this one, this was a really good first experience to do because I really liked the other pieces way more than this one in the end. And so this was the only one that was kind of technically damaged a little bit. So basically, after I finished, obviously it got stuck on the board, and I was using I know from wheel throwing, if you haven't seen that episode, go check it out. It's from this season, when I went to when I went to what's it called, Crocked in Brookvale, to do like a glow in the dark wheel throwing session. You have like these like metal, what do you call it, like the little strings with the handles, and you kind of like go underneath it to scrape it off the board. But when I did it, it looked like it just kind of went a little bit uneven and kind of took off a chunk of the clay. Luckily, it actually sat flat still. It just looked really ugly underneath it. Anyway, I kind of semi-fixed that, and then I decided after that, I was like, cleaned up the board using the tool, give it a nice clean, and then decided that I'm going to go grab another cling wrap or like piece of plastic, and I'm going to start working on the plastic instead, because it's meant to be uneven cookie stuff. So like the bottom, if it had a little bit of fold or crease, I wouldn't mind, and it'll be easy to fix anyway. It'll be way easier than dealing with it being stuck on the board. And I wasn't going to have that happen again. So my next project was, I thought it would be really cute, because I asked for some circle cutters, and then he ended up bringing the lovely gentleman, Jeff, who helped us, ended up bringing a whole tub of like cookie cutters. And I was like, ooh, let's make cookie cutout kind of like coasters. So here I am basically going for one of those like round, almost like Linzer cookies with like this kind of cookie cutout. And then tried to learn how to like get the really clean cut, because the first few were a little bit like a bit mushed up. So if you're going to do this kind of cutout, you want it to be pretty clean and pretty defined. And then I basically used my hand to kind of even out the circle and make it wider, because it was a bit small for a coaster and a bit thick too. So as you can see what I'm doing here. And then I went back in to kind of smooth it out with a rolling pin, and also like add in some texture again with the sponge. And then I thought, to make it even more obvious that it's a cookie rather than just relying on the color later, it would be really cool to put in like a heart cutout in the middle, like what they do with like the jam cookies. In hindsight, I really thought it would be really cute to make like the sandwich cookie. So I might do that next week if I have a chance to make more, rather than just painting and stuff and doing the glaze. So here I am doing that. And then pretty much after that, I ended up loving doing this and found it so fun that I wanted to make a square one as well. The square one was a little bit easier to cut, but it did kind of end up a little bit semi-warped. But I think it's cute, because a lot of those cookies sometimes I bake a little bit, like, they kind of spread a little, so it kind of had that effect. And again, I put a little heart in the middle. I was making these, and I was thinking I'll ask the guy that I like whether he wants any for his home, like if there's any designs he liked. Yeah, for this one I was going to go for the heart, but now I thought heart in the square might be a little bit strange and also a bit too same, because I already made two of the heart-shaped ones. So then I found a little leaf cut, and I thought, I do like a little sort of more like a tile design kind of cookie. So I just did some render cutouts. This cutter, by the way, was so hard to wash afterwards. I had to soak it in water because I couldn't get it clean. So hopefully that was okay. But yeah, you can see here even struggling to get the pieces out after I cut them out. But it turned out really, really cute. I really liked it. Really can't wait to kind of start glazing these. A lot of people were like asking about their artworks today, their clay work today, because they were thinking they would have been fired by now, but apparently they're a little behind on the project because it's been, broken, the kiln. But it's really cool. I've never seen a piece fired yet. And I have my piece still from Crocked that's yet to be picked up too, so I'm pretty excited about that. I might actually send them an email now that I remembered it, to double check on how the progress is. But yeah, it'd be super cool. Really, really excited about that. Then I can display it on my wall of fame. Anyway, over here I'm starting to work on the next one. And this next one is my all-time favorite. You can see I decided to start making it a little bit bigger. It needed to be bigger because I knew the design was going to be having some other sections with like stuff on it. So it needed like a little extra room space for the mug to actually sit on. So I made it a bit wider and also so that it's more pancake-esque. So this is the pancake one. So basically I got the shape right, got the level right. Then I started preparing the butter cube or butter rectangle, and then kind of also making the flat spot, sort of the melty looking part. But Catherine suggested I make it thinner, but at that point it was already stuck on, it was already pretty wet, so it was a little hard to kind of fix that. So next time if I make another one, I could also try another version, like version 0.2 2.0, like next time I'm there. I'm like kind of like just trying to make it a little more unnatural looking, kind of like, natural looking, irregular look is the word I'm looking for. Anyway, here I spray it down and start shaping the sides so that it's got no cracks, but also kind of more that pancake shape. This is actually probably the easiest one to make, but the most fun one as well. And then I start working on kind of doing the crisscross carving to allow them to adhere to each other. And yeah, and I did it on the side towards the top left, and then I see there's plenty of space for someone's mug to go on there, and it'd be such a cute piece to have on the table. I know. I thought they were really, really cute. So hopefully that guy will be impressed, because I definitely would like some of these in my room. But it'll have to depend on how well the glazing kind of turns out, because the painting is a whole different story and a whole different skill set. Anyway, you can see I had a decent amount made. And then next thing that I mostly needed to make on top to complete my list was, I also kind of wanted to make a cat one, like a cat kind of like curled around on like a cat bed, and then the cat bed itself is like the mug. So maybe next time, I think it would be really cute, because he has a cat too, so I think he'll like that. And then if not, I can always keep most of these ones. I also thought the heart-shaped cookies would be really cute as a little set, like maybe a 4 or 3, and then like make a little sort of like a cookie jar or cookie like rectangle box to store it in, as if it was like a cookie sleeve. You know what I mean? Yeah, I thought that would be a really nice touch. Anyway, over here I'm trying to figure out how do I do the cream part of a Swiss roll so it looks like a Swiss roll, and I didn't want it to look like a cinnamon roll. So that's why I say. Anyway, after that, I did a little bit of glaze painting, just playing around, and then they said they'll fire that one because they had some leftover ones that are like already fired, ready for glazing for practice, just because people leave it behind. And since I had some extra time, so I did that, and then I decided to move on with my day's schedule. The next thing I wanted to try was Yochi. And because Yochi, I'm familiar with Yochi and I love Yochi, but they apparently released a cookie fries, so cookie shaped in fries, and then obviously dunk it in sauce and stuff. And I was kind of craving Biscoff a lot lately. It's usually not my go-to flavor, but I recently been kind of craving it, so I thought that might be nice. The thing is, I forget that I really like soft and chewy cookies, and I don't really like hard crunchy chocolate chip cookies, like at least chocolate chip cookies if we're talking about it. I prefer like the soft chewy kind, not too much crunch, but with that kind of baking and that kind of surface shape, everything, it would end up being a really crunchy, more like a harder shortbread cookie, which isn't a shortbread cookie either. So it wasn't that pleasant, I'll be honest. I went there and saw it, and I was just kind of like, oh, this is going to be pretty cheap because it's still by weight. So I tried 2 of them, and I realized I also didn't record the part that I was making it. So I drizzled some chocolate sauce on it, then I drizzled some Biscoff, and I also sprinkled on some cookie crumbs on top, just to enhance the cookie experience. Anyway, here you go. I'm sitting outside, I found a nice spot to try it, and you can see I immediately think, I'm glad I didn't buy too much of this. It was just a little bit I want to say Yochi, this is not Yochi's best invention yet. It's a little stale, I'm not gonna lie, and it's also just I don't know I'm sure it's probably fresh, but it just kind of had that kind of stale texture. Anyway, it wasn't very great, so I'll stick with the regular soft serves. Frozen yogurt. Anyway, this is so the place that I wanted to explore on today's schedule as well, and wasn't quite long enough to make its own video, so I just added it to this video, is MiraMade, MIRA, and then the word made, all in one. And basically it's a really cute space where there's multiple shelves, and then they allow different kind of artists or trinket creators and such, kind of people who would be vendors at say SmashCon or something like that, to come in and display their sort of handmade arts and crafts. And everything was really cute and everything was really cool. There were some things that were surprisingly pricey. I think there was something priced at $35, and considering the size, it was definitely a little steep. But I did come across to this side and then end up seeing Adventure Time themed stuff, and I was like, oh my god! I was like, I really want this, but it was like $18, and I was like, I don't know if I want to spend that right now, because this was before I went to Yochi, and I was like thinking, oh, I might want to spend this on the food experience rather than like spend it on something just like a physical thing. And I figured I could always come back next week and see if it's still around or see if there's more of those things. So yeah, in the end I decided against it because I do have a lot of like things to clip onto my belt already, so I was like, I don't know if I need this, and I wanted to sit and kind of think about how I was going to incorporate it or like sub out stuff that I already have to make it worthwhile. Otherwise it's just kind of going to sit there and be pretty, and it's kind of a waste of money. Anyway, here I was also checking my schedule to see if I had any more money that I needed to expend on like travel or like other events, just to be 100% sure. Because sometimes, with as many events that the amount of events that I'm going to this year, it has started to get a little bit confusing for me. I sometimes forget which day I'm doing what. Yeah. I mean, one time I went to Incognito art shows. The show was at Carriageworks, and I showed up like almost like 2 weeks early. I woke up, went there, and knew it wasn't that day for some reason. I just went there and then realized after I arrived, I was like, what am I doing here? That was a really bad day. In terms of cognitive behavior, I'd say. But yeah, anyway, it was a really cute space, and it's clearly very, very new. So there's a lot of things to come and a lot more space. So hopefully I'll come back another time and it'll be even more fleshed out and more choices. Maybe some jewelry would be super cool, and more like gacha stuff probably as well. I mean, gacha is very, very expensive hobby, so I only dabble in it when I'm like hanging out with one of my friends who loves them. But anyway, thank you for joining me on my journey today, and catch you in the next episode.